Now I'd like to introduce our host, Jason Maganoy, Head of Business Development at St. Joseph Media. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks for the intro, Chantal. Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited to be interviewing Jillian today. And just to give you some quick background, Jillian actually was my teacher when I was at the National Theatre School of Canada, which is where I went to school. And to give you a sense, she's an award-winning director from St. John's, Newfoundland. Jillian Keiley assumed her role as English Theatre Artistic Director at the National Arts Centre in 2012. She has directed and taught across Canada and internationally, including many acclaimed productions for Artistic Fraud of Newfoundland, which she founded, and 5 seasons at the Stratford Festival. Really happy to be hosting you today. Oh, you're on mute.
Unmute. Thank you. I'm so delighted to have the opportunity to hang with you a little bit again. You were a wonderful student.
Yes.
Excellent student.
That makes me very happy to hear.
You were so good. He really was.
So I guess my first question is, how are you? How have you been holding up during the pandemic?
You know, I'm so lucky. And I guess I'm just this, to say to practice gratitude is a way to stay happy. So I've been mostly happy because I do recognize how lucky I am. I'm in Newfoundland by a conflagration of circumstances that meant that I actually left town as soon as the pandemic started, because the building shut down and my daughter was coming home. So I just hopped on the plane with her and thinking I'd return in a week. And I came home with several sets of yoga pants. And now I've been conducting business from my office. So everything I have on is borrowed. Just put that there. I haven't had a COVID haircut in a long time. So I'm very, very lucky. I'm actually today in beautiful Trinity East in Newfoundland. So I feel very, very lucky. So I've been personally very happy. I've been very worried about the world, of course, and busier. Interestingly, now the theaters are all shut down, I've been busier working on a way to reinvent theater as one job. And another job is that the theater, along with almost every other industry in the world, I think, certainly in the North American world and in Canada, has been challenged after the Black Lives Matter statements that came out to really live up to those statements of against white supremacy in large institutions, or unfair practices or equity. And so all of us at the National Arts Centre have been really engaged in that conversation. And it's been a really intense, really eye-opening time for us. So we've been working really, really hard on these two, reinventing our art form, and invested in the social exchange about what's going to happen next, not just for art, but for the world.
Wow. So how has the art, like you said that you're busier and you're working in another province. So how has the National Arts Centre pivoted during this really challenging time, and how has it been going?
Well, I must say I'm really proud of the NEC. They've really done excellent work. Right away, as soon as the pandemic happened, there was a program that happened right away. One of my colleagues started something in partnership with Facebook to begin, and then went with Slate Foundation and Royal Bank, as well as I think Chapters Indigo, and created something called Canada Performs. And that program put 700 artists online. That program took 700 artists out of their living rooms, and writers and actors, and we did 700 performances, and it had over 4 million views. So we had Canada online in a very big way right away, like within 2 weeks of the pandemic. And I'm so again lucky, but I feel so grateful to work in a place that was able to turn around something that quickly. because mostly institutions don't turn around that quickly. And we really were able to move fast because of some really, really great leadership from some of my colleagues. So I was very proud to be involved in that. And we've been working on ways to integrate now a new way of working and a new way of thinking about theater while we can't sit closely, while we can't sit next to each other and squish next to each other as normal. So we've been doing some really, really good work in that area, and I'm really excited. I can't tell you too much about, we have a project coming down the pipes, but all the details are being hammered out, but hopefully we will have something really, really significant coming up really soon that's actually going to make an offering to accompany a lot of the other offerings that have been happening over the past 2 or 3 months. Because theater makers, you just can't keep us down. I mean, you just can't. They have their theater makers are born with a, it's a vocation. It's not like you don't sit around and, hope to get a gig because you're going to make a ton of money, or because it's a special skill you've got. It's a passion and a desire, and all the stuff they say is true about storytellers. They have to tell a story, and they really feel quite that people depend on those stories. And I've found that's true, that a lot of people really depend on getting their stories from theater people, and getting that fix. I don't think of it as a fix, because it fixes you somehow to get it. Anyway, so we've been working on that, and so many people have done so many inventive things. Shows where you drive in to see the show, or shows that happen on people's porches, or shows that happen on radio, that you go to a certain place and it's on the radio, or shows that are for one person at a time. There's so many incredible inventive ways that it's just like dandelions through the cracks. People just want to tell the story, so they're finding ways to do it. It's actually a really exciting time. I know it's really frightening and depressing and all of that too, and I totally respect that, but I admire my friends who are taking this time to make something really special happen, either socially or artistically.
I mean, that actually is the perfect bridge into my next question. Like, when I saw the NAC and Facebook partnership, I was actually blown away by that. I was really surprised at how quickly that came together, and to see really two great, NAC is great. Facebook's okay, but two organizations coming together like that, and to create almost like a new medium for artists to express themselves. So is there anything specific that you can share that you've seen in the cultural sector that's really inspired you? And this idea of how organizations and artists are redefining themselves, what kind of genres or what kind of new types of form are you expecting from this pandemic?
Yeah, I think there's, it's still evolving, and people are still reeling, and it usually takes a little while for something to spin out. But something really exciting that was happening were these plays. There was one out of Toronto that I think Talk Was Free might have been involved in, and Mitchell Cushman's outfit was involved in. Can't remember now, forgive me, but and there was another one out of Dublin, I think, but they call you, it's a mystery, and they call you up on the phone, like outside the march. Thank you. Outside the march. Yes, sorry, and I know that company really well. They're a great company, but it's so great, like such a brilliant thing. How do you engage with it? You call people, because theater is not about a proscenium. It's and I'm cautious about saying this always, but I think we haven't been gifted the language yet to describe what it is. But it's spiritual, and it's a connection. It's a connection between you and the performer, and the liveness of it, and in the moment of it. That's a number one thing. So if somebody's live with you on the other side of a phone, or somebody's live with you on Facebook, so interesting that people would tune in to see somebody perform live, more likely than they would to, if you found out somebody was performing live, they go, oh, well, I hit play now, let's check this out while they're performing live. But if you said, oh, this, clown is doing a show out of their studio, it happened a couple of days ago, you might want to check it out. Maybe you wouldn't. But there's something about the moment of saying, this is in the world right now. This is happening in the world right now. There's some spiritual thing that we connect to that's so invigorating and beautiful. Like, it's, even if it's through these waves, even if it's through these little data bits, it's still live. It's still beautiful. Why are 20 people or however many people are watching this right now? Why tune in now? Why break up your day? Why not make it at a more convenient time? Because if I say the wrong thing, you want to be there to, to say, I was there when she said the wrong thing. So anyway, so that's my offer about the liveness of it, the connection, the importance of that.
I love that idea of, there's something really powerful about the liveness that resonates even beyond the platform that you're on, whether it be a Zoom or a Google Hangout, etc. But then that takes me to this idea of the role of a major cultural institution, which is a space. So, what will the role of the NAC be as we slowly rebuild our country?
Yeah, so an excellent question, and we're all again trying to figure that out, But we know, I think so much has changed, and it's funny. I was working on a production of Copenhagen, right, and we never got it to stage. We were going into tech. And Copenhagen is about what truth is, and what's real and what's not real. And it's based on this idea of quantum physics, that something could be in two places at one time. Something could be true and untrue at the same time, or something could be here and there. And with the sorry, I just want to grab the last thing you said, and because I got distracted thinking about quantum physics of all things. Well, that's what we were working on. That's exactly what we were working on. And what was your question? Sorry.
It was about the role of the NAC in rebuilding the country.
Oh.
So the role of an institution.
Yes. So can we be because we just made this beautiful building, and now can we be an institution that is not an inward facing institution? Can we be an outward facing institution? So suddenly a lot of the work that's happening is actually happening outward. It's happening in people's living rooms, or what happens if we have commissions now from all across the country to do something big, or what if we start to focus on doing big outdoor work, or what if we start doing flash mobs? What can we do as a producer to really engage with out there, because we're, what's more important, the bricks and mortar or the title of the National Arts Center? And I'd argue, being from the furthest way away, that a lot of the NAC's job should be to serve that community, the communities outside. But we still have this precious building, and I think if we can serve the outside world, which would include Ottawa, Ottawa for a little while, and then make it safe, so that coming together is important, so that coming together is possible. I think that's really that's going to be a great day. But we could be both things, I guess. We can be in both places at the same time in a way that maybe is a new step forward for us. I'm trying to look at that very positively, that previously, while we've toured and that kind of thing, previously we've been a very very internal looking organization. That's what's got to do with quantum physics. Can we be both? Can we be both an internal organization that actually is serving the Ottawa local audience, as well as visitors, as well as people who are interested in Canada as a nation, serve inside? And can we also be, in a really serious way, focused on the outside of how we can produce to make Canada stronger and better. So I think that's going to be a really interesting way that we proceed, is to respect the building and respect the gathering place, but also respect that we could have a bigger, more important hand in stabilizing and in, provoking and catalyzing work to happen right across the country.
That's great. Like this idea of scaling the NAC just across multi-channel, scaling the NAC across the country to help rebuild the country.
Yeah.
That's a great idea. I love it. And,
Thanks.
and it's funny because like even hearing you talk about like Copenhagen and just, this idea of an artist exploring this idea of truth. And, one of the things that I have a question about is like, how are artists going to like, everything on Facebook right now is artists just constantly trying to say how they're relevant or we are essential workers, but it's like, how can artists contribute to this moment? And how can artists sort of redefine their practice and stay relevant during this difficult time?
Jason, it's a funny thing because you're a good playwright. You're a very, very good playwright. And I'm surprised that you would even ask the question, because I'll ask you, who on this call right now has not watched a movie, has not been binging on Netflix, has not been engaged in a novel? Like, if you've lost your job, how did you spend your time? If your job is shut down, how are you spending your time? How are you occupying your kids so that you can go to work? So I know that belongs to the realm of film and TV, but where are those film and TV people coming from? They're coming from, a lot of them are coming from theater. A lot of them are coming from playwriting. So it really is surprising to me when people say, artists have to redefine themselves. It's like, if there were no artists right now, we would have a very, very big social problem on our hands. If people could, people are barred in their houses. Like, what are they doing? They're not out playing basketball. They have to do something with their brains so that they can connect to people. And I think art is actually the way forward. How we as theater people, like, who are, dependent on the gathering of people, how do we stay relevant? We're trying to reinvent that right now. But a lot of, because you're not the first person to ask me that. And I'm always surprised, because I know a lot of people who either went from theater to TV and film, or people who work in both. And they sharpen their sabers in both, right? So they, people who are really, really great TV writers or theater or film writers, a lot of them sharpen their sabers in the theater. So what is everybody watching this month? It's Hamilton, right? It's not, it's not TV. It's not Who's the Boss. People are watching Hamilton right now. And I think, thank God for Hamilton, because I think, Hamilton and Come From Away and these great, great plays that more people watch. I think it's a really exciting time, because a lot of people who normally kind of don't associate themselves with theater, don't consider themselves a theater goer, or have painted the idea of a theater goer as a certain kind of person, of which I am not. Suddenly they're watching Hamilton and saying, oh, that's actually really interesting. I wonder how they just moved a board, and he was in these that was a board, it was a desk, and now it's a door, and now they're in another place. How are they doing it? They're not changing the set. And people are using their imaginations in a whole new way, which is how the theater works, right? That's the theater's great tool. It's the imagination. It's not, can't film somebody walking down the street, but somebody can walk down the street and say they're walking down the street, they're walking down the street with just curtain behind them. We get that in the theater. So I think that opportunity for people is so exciting. So, even though, it feels kind of hollow if you've had the live experience to watch a lot of theater online. I've been watching a ton of it. And it's good. Like, it's good. It's good to experience that. And I think a lot of people I think a lot of non-theater goers are seeing theater online now. And
Yes,
we might have a whole rejuvenation, in a couple of years. People are like, actually, I do like theater. I did tune in to see that free theater online. It was pretty good,
Yeah.
Saw, what was it? A Servant of Two Masters. The National Theatre Live Servant of Two Masters had more viewers, like had 32 million viewers or something. Like, more people watched that show it couldn't have been 32 million. That's the population of a country. But it was a huge number. It was a huge number of people. I'd be interested to check what the Servant of Two, like it was legend. More people than you could ever seat saw that. More people than they could ever show in a theater saw Servant of Two Masters on TV. And how great. Maybe they're like, no, maybe I am a theater person.
Yeah, that is like this idea of just new ways to access theatrical content. Like, I mean, Disney Plus has been out for a while, and I finally got a subscription to Disney Plus because Hamilton was on it. And then
Right?
watching that theatrical performance was really wonderful. You're right. And that actually takes me to my next question, which is, so separate of government support, which obviously everyone has been receiving, we're all receiving government support. What does the culture sector need to do to continue to build resilience? I mean, some organizations are like, for example, some sectors are they're in gigantic trouble. Like they're all closing down. We're worried about arts organizations closing down as well, like paying rent for spaces that aren't being used, et cetera. Is this about changing their business model? Like what can the culture sector do to just be more resilient now, and then also to prepare themselves for the future?
Well, it's an interesting thing, and this is absolute. Like all of my answers here today are personal. They're all personal, but I think the wake up call that's happening across the country, not just in the NAC, but right across the country and right in North America, has created a conversation that's really interesting to me in the theater about whose stories are told. And I have, I guess, track record. I do a lot of work that is from Black, Indigenous, and people of color writers, and I have a lot of actors and that kind of thing. But I wonder if we, as an entire industry, actually started reaching out in a serious way, because we really still have predominantly, my audience is still predominantly white. So there's a lot of people, even though I, do my best, and I'm going to work harder, and I'm still working towards that, being better and opening it more and more. But is there a way for the entire industry to open it up so that, because I would suggest that, with exceptions of culturally specific companies, most large theaters are still predominantly white audiences. But what happens if we start to open up so that we really have welcomed audiences of color? What happens if we, so that we're not saying we're not exchanging, like it's not that. So I have 6,000 subscribers, or 7,006 probably subscribers in Ottawa, probably more. And what if we added another 5,000, 6,000 subscribers to that? Or what if we were able to open the doors so that, and I'm just saying predominantly, we do have a lot of people who come to see shows at the NEC, certainly from every color and creed and everything. People are there. But I'm just saying specifically for the theater, my audience is. And I just think, what would happen if we were able to really open it up so that literally every single person felt that they owned that building. And we were able to really make it so that every single person, like what happened with Indigenous theater at the National Arts Center, which is a brilliant, brilliant story. Yeah. When we opened and I didn't open it, I was there for it, but Kevin Loring and Laurie Marchand, who run the Indigenous theater department, when they opened that department this past year, they revolutionized the organization. And now you see many, 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 many more Indigenous people walk through those doors. And that doesn't mean that white audiences are leaving. That means that more people are coming in because they are welcome in a new way. They've been, the organization has reassessed itself and thought, yes, we must welcome everybody in a different way, in a new way, in a way that's really going to work for the people. And so I think, and this is again not specific to the NEC, but I think as we go through this revolution, the social revolution that we're going through right now, we'll see the wall, the kind of barrier of the NEC that we broke architecturally a couple of years ago. We're going to see that crumble down like cookie pretty soon, and more people are going to start coming in. And we're going to revitalize the organization by not keeping it a special space for a small group of people. It's going to be a wide space for a lot of people who really feel genuine community there. That's my hope for the NEC, and it's my hope for all theaters across the country.
Yeah, that would be the ultimate way to just help build a stronger, more resilient theater sector. Just seeing that diversity in audience and diversity of voices, points of view. And that takes me to my next question, which is it's been really exciting for me to actually see a lot of leadership changes. Like I'm seeing a lot of my classmates, for example, are now becoming the ADs of theater companies, and for example, seeing Wayne over at Soul Pepper and seeing how she's radically transformed how I even view that theater company. So, one of the calls from the community in the culture sector is we should hire more Black, Indigenous, people of color in leadership roles. But how? I mean, at the same time, it's like, there's a really exciting role opening up at the Tarragon with Richard. And, how do we create a pipeline of talented people of color who can be leaders and take those roles? What's the best way we can do that moving forward?
Well, I think mentorship is really, really important, and I'm learning more and more about that now myself. I've been at the NAC since 2012, and I'll be leaving in the next short while, few years. But I don't know. Again, I challenge. Again, this has not been approved by the organization. But I challenge myself because I've witnessed the importance of what happened with the Indigenous theater, and I challenge the myth of, I shouldn't call it a myth of scarcity, but that was something I heard a lecture on one time called the myth of scarcity. I thought it was so smart. That is all kind of tied up in this capitalist idea that there's only so many people who can have the money, so we have to make sure that only certain people get access to the money, and this idea that there's scarcity and I think, it's possible for Black and people of color and Indigenous people to, or disabled people to, it doesn't have to just be, and I guess I'm leaving soon, not soon, but, shortly. So it's, I'm not really thinking about me in this, but it's possible for people, if we have the will to do it, it's possible, like we did with the Indigenous Theater Department. I didn't have to leave for the Indigenous Theater Department to happen. So I challenge us as a society to think about, and within, again, I won't specifically mark the NAC, but why is it that the companies that are specifically, and the great Philip Aiken noted this himself. His company started at the same time as Soul Pepper. Why isn't Obsidian as top of mind, as wealthy, as all the things as Soul Pepper? Their leader at Obsidian, the several leaders they had were really, really great, but they weren't tied to the money in the same way, and they weren't tied to funding in the same way. And so is there a way that it doesn't need to be, I mean, it's great that Wayne took over Soul Pepper, fantastic, but does Wayne have to wait for, for the opening to come at Soul Pepper, or does or can we make it so that Obsidian, through funding, through real donor investment, through people thinking, hey, you know what? I'm definitely going to give this year to Obsidian because I want to see Obsidian as important and top of mind as Soul Pepper. And if we could do that so that those companies actually, so that you're not waiting to come, you know, you're not waiting to bump out Tarragon, but, you know, other people are like, when would the Obsidian job come up? That's what should be happening, you know?
Yeah.
So I think it goes to, again, a real, so that the people that are in these larger institutions, in these larger houses, actually have people who are care, you know, as Philip Aiken said, I put Black people first. That's my number one priority. I put Black people first. There should be a company as large as the National Arts Centre English Theatre, you know, which I do a fair bit of diversity in my programming, but wouldn't it be great if there was Fujian who puts Asian Canadian playwrights first? Wouldn't that be great if they were at the A category meetings with me? Wouldn't that be great if Obsidian was at the A category meetings with me? The Vancouver Asian Theatre Company, like there's companies that specialize in that. They need to be held up in a different way, in a new way, so that those companies actually become as critical, and I say that in a very Cody way. If you're just on the phone, you can't see me use my fingers, but in the way that people, you know, will look at the larger houses to see, oh, what's happening in their seasons or whatever. People need to be thinking, oh, what's going to happen this year at Obsidian? Like that's, I do that. I do that because I'm looking for shows to program. So, you know, so what's going to happen this year? We need to have that kind of anticipation, not about, yes, about Stratford, because people do stand by and wait to see what the season's going to be at Stratford. What if we said, what's going to be at Stratford and what's going to be at Obsidian? Can Obsidian be that, so that we don't have to wait for somebody to retire in 10 years or 12 years to be replaced? Why can't we elevate these companies to be as powerful, and I mean that again, quotes and quotes, as wealthy as the other companies? It really comes down to follow the money, I think.
Yeah. And that, you know, that takes me to my next question, which is, so what does next season look like for the NAC? So best case scenario, because you're inventing a new way to do stuff in that space, and a worst case scenario. So what are you thinking?
Well, the worst case scenario is that we just completely shut down. You know, completely shut down, like everybody, you know, gets laid off, and so no invention can happen. The best case scenario, I think, isn't necessarily returning to what we were. I think the best case scenario is going to be returning with a new vision. I think audiences not having to be scared, of course, of COVID. So if we had, is this pre or post vaccinations?
Yeah, best case scenario. Yeah, best case scenario includes the vaccinations. So we're just back in the theater at that point.
Okay. If you're just greenlighting the vaccine there for me, let's just go back in the theater. But I do think it's going back to the theater now that we've had this opportunity to wrestle out some really important questions about what theater is and who's telling the story. And those two questions were really big questions for us in this period, in the great pause. Those two questions about what theater is has been challenged. And I've been challenged by it, and I create all kinds of weird stuff all the time. But even I've been like, oh, is theater online? Is theater a telephone call? Is theater in your car? Can theater be can you put a single, like, can you put a one person show on a main stage? Like all of these questions that have, my instant thing is no. And then I think, oh yeah, actually it could. So it's it's flowering out, this beautiful new way of looking at things, and who's telling the story on the major stages, I think is things are going to shift, and I think it's going to be really exciting. I can't wait for everybody to be able to come back and see that
Yes.
that shift together.
And I guess so I guess my next question then is, what can the people doing, like the people who are attending this talk today, what can they do to support the arts right now? Obviously they can't go, so what other things can they do to support the arts during the pandemic?
You know, something that I guess there's two things. I guess, you know, fiscal support is great, and you know, some companies have done this, and I really laud them. A couple of companies have released their seasons and said, listen, here's the season. You can buy a subscription to it if you want, and we might cancel, and we'll put it off, and we'll do it again later. Like, if you want to just send ahead your subscription and pre-buy your subscription, it's just, I mean, we're not offering a subscription right now, but some companies are across the country, and I think it's really, it's just a very generous act of faith, act of support, and I've heard companies doing it. A lot of companies have allowed for people who have bought tickets in advance to donate the company tickets, you know, donate tickets to the company, which is just, again, a very, very generous thing. So those are fiscal, but something that's actually really cheered me up, you know, because we're just people. We're just trying to do our thing. And, you know, again, there's very few people who do this job as a job. Like, I feel like kind of priests. Like, I get up in the morning and I'm thinking about the theater, and I go to bed at night and I'm thinking about the theater. And I got a family, like I got friends and stuff. But it's like, really, it's just like, just think about this all the time. And occasionally, not every day, but occasionally, one of my subscribers will just send me a little note and just say, hey, Jill, we're thinking about you. Can't wait to get back in the red seats. And I'm just like, I'm done. I'm done for a couple of days. I'm good then. I'm good. And I feel like, is it because I need approval? And I don't think it's that. I need to feel like my audience feels the same way about the powerful work that we've had, like, you know, on our stages that I do. One of the great things, though, is that I started something. Here's something that we started that I'm really excited about. It's on Facebook too. But we started a Facebook group of English theater community members. And people joined a Facebook group. Occasionally we have watch parties. We watch shows together. Really exciting. We have these big conversations about art and what's okay and what's not okay, and things you like and things you don't like. We put up pictures of old shows and say, oh, I like this show, and oh, I remember this show, or whatever. And people are on that chain who were there at the very beginning of the theater. It's a wonderful thing about Canadian theater. Like, the legends are still alive. A lot of the people who did the initial ground laying for Canadian theater, they exist. They're still with us. So we're so lucky. So occasionally, it'll be like, oh yeah, I was there, you know, for the Ecstasy of Rita Joe, and this happened. It's like, what, you know? So so it's a really exciting place. We've been, you know, we had moments of great flurry of activity on it and some of less activity. But anyway, that's been a really nice thing. So I've been looking for years for a way to talk to the audiences about theater that is not, you know, how did you like the show at the reception after? Because it's like, you just can't talk about it. But it's quite lively. It's quite lively.
I love that. So I'm gonna open it up for some questions from the audience, and Glenn actually has a question, which is there a possibility for theater companies from equity-seeking groups that are BIPOC led to be handed over the benefits of a network they've been kept from, and to possibly curate a season for a larger organization or theater institution? That's
yes. Yeah. Yeah. It is entirely possible. Stay tuned.
Really?
Stay tuned.
That's awesome. I love that.
That's all I got to say. Stay tuned, Glenn.
That's why we're talking to you. NAC, It's probably with Facebook. I'm joking. I'm joking.
Yeah. Curate your Facebook. What is that they do with fantasy football season?
Another question is, what are some of the best virtual theater shows you've seen so far?
Yeah, well, I really, I'm a big fan. I love Timon of Athens, the Stratford production, Timon of Athens, really good, as well as the Coriolanus.
Oh yeah.
It's really, really great. I just watched Wise Children from England. It was really, really great. We saw Frankenstein. I think probably the one that I loved the most was Passover, which was recorded. I found that one the most moving, and the one that probably in a way worked for me best as a theater show. That I don't know if that's online anymore, but oh yeah, it is. It's on Amazon Prime actually. I really recommend that. When we saw Small Island, which was it's funny, you know, I thought it was I thought it was really good, and I was like, oh, you know, I love this for all these reasons, and it, you know, talking about equity and different people's interpretations of things, and I, you know, Small Island is about a Jamaican. It's a Jamaican story, and I had watched it, and I was like, you know, because we're watching a lot of Black work right now because of Black Lives Matter, and we were just very focused on that. And anyway, some Black community members wrote on the chat. They're like, I don't think I like Small Island. It was like, oh, I didn't like it either. but I had really liked it. So it's, I mean, but it's great. You know, it's great to be in that conversation. And they're like, I thought the Jamaican accents were terrible. Like, totally over my head. I didn't know. But I was really so grateful to have that community who would actually say to me, yeah, you know, for me, this didn't work about Small Island, and here's why. And it was actually really, really great. Same thing happened actually with Les Blancs, the Yael Farber's piece, the Lorraine Hansberry. We watched that last week.
Yeah.
Again, I was very, very moved by it, and again, some people who had more cultural authority over that conversation than me came online and were like, I'm not sure about that. I was like, how interesting. I just didn't think of it that way. Of course I didn't. Like, I can only see the world through my perspective. And so I guess that's part of why when I say I'm leaving the NAC, I'm not going tomorrow, but I don't feel like anybody should stay in an artistic role in one company. I think you might, you know, jump companies as people do, but nobody would want to stay longer than an appropriate period, because especially in a national organization, because it's just my perspective, you know. So how different the world is. I just was working on something with a person of color about curating a thing, and she made me see every single piece that we were curating in a new way, even though we were agreeing on the pieces. She's like, just check from this angle. It's like, so right, you know, so right. So it's just, I mean, we're deep in that conversation right now, so it's coming up a lot, but I think it's really exciting and invigorating.
It's funny. I mean, I saw Yale's National Arts Center show, and the thing that was going through my mind was, that's an amazing set. Like, the budget on that must have been through. And I kept thinking about the shows that I was doing when I was doing summer work. So like, my sets were okay, but that seemed to be, that was something that I really want to do eventually with my playwriting. But Adam has a question, which is, when talking about reaching different demographics of people, what barriers do you think are keeping people from diverse backgrounds to coming to events? What would solutions look like? Example, doing work in different languages could be a solution, finding ways to put on shows in areas outside of the city center, etc.
Yeah, and they're both great ideas. Um, I think it's going to take a time, and it's going to take direct relationship building. Um, I mean, it's so much. I think when you speak about the audiences, is it Alan? Alan?
Adam.
Was it Adam? Sorry, Adam. I think when we think about audience building, um, I think we used to believe that you'd put on, um, you know, we did a show, Trace, last year, and a lot of that show was in Cantonese. A lot of it was in Cantonese. Beautiful show, Jeff Ho production, and he played piano. It was gorgeous. In fact, uh, a lot of the show was in English. Then about, I don't know, an eighth of the show was in Cantonese, and then another eighth of the show was in piano. Because anytime a male character spoke, he played classical music. It was just the most beautiful show. Anyway, I just loved it. And I really believed that because we've done a fair bit of Asian work, actually, a lot over the years, and there's just so much good work. And we haven't. Occasionally, we'll get an audience that is in the half and half. Maybe in the studio, you might get a half Asian audience in there. Optically, this is totally people who pass for one or the other because I'm watching for it. I'm like, did we manage to get some people in from the Asian community? And because I'm really hoping, and sometimes we do, but it's still we still have work to do in making it that it's not an exception, that it's not that it's a place where the NAC is a place where Asian work happens. The NAC is a place where Black work happens. The NAC is a place where white work happens. It's just like it's where the symphony is or where the theater is or whatever. So I think we just need to continue to not and again, a fair bit of work gets done throughout all the different departments. But maybe we need to find a way to make people feel welcome by stringing, the Taiwanese dance company that comes in from the dance department, and Jeff's show, and package it in a way that we have, and use an Asian marketing company to help us with that. I think it's part of that outreach that we haven't quite got yet, but I think a lot of it has to do with creating a space, like we're in this liminal space, right? In between things, where we're a company that also does, we're a theater company that does Black work, we're also a company that does white work, we're also a company that does work. But if we were able to say the NAC is a place that does a lot of Asian community work, if you're interested in that kind of thing in particular, perhaps, or you'd be more comfortable knowing that there was a lot of your community on stage here, maybe it's something where we could do that. We're conscious that we don't ghettoize things either, right? So it's a bit of a tricky thing. Like, I think we need a lot of, if we really want to be the multicultural country we claim to be, and we really want to be the multicultural theater company we want to be, we need a lot of help and a lot of internal, we need a lot more people inside the organization who can lead us internally towards those communities.
And that actually takes us to the end of our hour. But Jillian, thank you so much for this discussion. It was fantastic. And it's so amazing. I just love talking about art with someone. And I just love feeling very positive and very reaffirmed that, there is definitely going to be a huge role that artists and arts organizations and cultural institutions are going to play as we rebuild this amazing country of ours. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you to everyone who joined us today. But looking forward to hosting you at future Ottawa Insider events. But thank you so much, and hope you have a great afternoon. Bye for now.
Thank you, everyone.